and disable your video. Fraser, can you start recording, please?
Yeah, that's come on now.
Okay, so hi everyone, and welcome to the First Housing Repairs online show and share. I'm Paul Klimpson and I'm the delivery manager on this project. Next slide, please, Fraser. Before I take you through what we will cover today, just to remind you of why we do these show and shares. These give an opportunity to the team to celebrate what they've achieved during the sprint, demo any working software that they've built, and share information on the progress made so far. But most importantly is to give you, our collaborators and supporters, the opportunity to give feedback to us and ask any questions that you may have. Next slide, please, Fraser. So what will we cover today? In a moment, I'll introduce you to the core team, and then I'll hand over to Fraser, who's our product owner from Lincoln Council, who will provide an overview of the project. I'll then take you through our approach, provide an update on the progress we've made so far. Then we'll give you a demo of our beta prototype, and we'll walk you through the end-to-end journey of a resident booking a repair to a cupboard in their kitchen. And then I'll share what we will be focused on in our next sprint before asking any questions that you may have. Next slide, please, Fraser. Next slide. Okay, so who is in our core team? Like I said, we have Fraser Chickett, who's our product owner from Lincoln. You have myself, Paul Klimpson, who's delivery manager at Maytech. We have Fernando Aquila from Lambeth Council, Bhavesh Patel, who is our lead engineer from Maytech. We have Jayad Amatajo from Southwark Council. We have Wendy Banks, our business analyst from Lincoln Council. We also have Theon Johnson, who is our user researcher. Then we have Sam Villas from DUHC Digital, which is previously known to you all as MHCLG Digital. We have El Villamati, who's our senior engineer from Maytech. We have Jim Bowen representing the Thistle Group. We have Mesa Canoni, our software engineer from Maytech. And finally, Aziz Ambra, our UX designer from Maytech. Next slide. Okay, Fraser, I'm just going to hand over to you to give a project overview.
Thank you very much. Just before we just get stuck into that, Wendy, Dave, can you just let people in if there's any admittances come through, please? Because I can't get to them from my screen. Thank you very much. Right then, so our vision for what we wanted this beta and the actual product to be. I'm not going to read this out word for word on here. We'll share the slides after the show. But really what we're after is creating something that is really reusable for authorities, that it's not just meeting the needs of an individual authority setup, where we can deploy this out, integrate with various scheduling tools and focus. Really the big difference with this is focusing around the residents' users' needs rather than us focusing on, as traditional, the authorities' needs. So the problem that we're trying to solve here is that there's an astonishing cost across the UK with this, estimated around £30 million a year just in call handling fees. And that's largely because where an authority does still take repairs, what that means is that customers are often, it's the only channel available to them and that they actually prefer to phone us. It's a real complex service with all different types of impacts and effects around this, things like contractors. It's important to the customer that they can articulate what's wrong with the repair type that they're trying to report for us. And there isn't a kind of good example on the market at the moment that we've seen through Discovery, Alpha Technical, of where an authority is doing this really well. So what we want to be able to do is create something that is going to help shift some of these calls across into this digital channel. So again, just focusing on that point, that really what's important for us as this is part of a product is focusing on that user/resident needs, where they want to be able to report a repair in their home or in the future a communal area. And for the organisation, obviously for us needing to carry out the repair, we need as much information so we can send the right person with the right tools and equipment so that they can fix that repair on the first visit. So through the work that we've done so far, we've had some key insights throughout this as a journey. And one of the real forefront things on this is that residents don't really trust our online services at the moment. And if they have an incomplete experience in there, then next time they come to engage with us, they'll choose to phone instead. Through eligibility, we need to be able to understand who is and isn't eligible for reporting a repair online and divert those off to the right channels where needed. And also understand the priority of the repair as well. There are only going to be certain repairs that we want customers to report through this. If it is a genuine emergency, if there's a risk to life, etc., we're still going to encourage these users and residents to call us up. One thing that is the main challenge really is the diagnosis event that we have to go through as part of this. About understanding where the problem is, what that problem is that they're trying to report. There's some real good technologies that we can kind of help to understand that through reporting online. When somebody's reporting over the phone, they're limited to just being able to try and describe it, whereas being able to upload imagery as part of this process. We're hoping that we'll be able to get a much better understanding of what the repair is before the operative gets there. And to make this service inclusive as well, it's really important to us that this is accessible to everybody. Quite often, people in council properties are some of the most vulnerable in society, so it needs to be accessible to all of those as a group. So where have we come from so far in some respects is that we've been developing our common service pattern, which is in those green circles on the screen below. And through the beta, it's this common service pattern that we are looking to actually create. We're not looking to necessarily iterate on this at this stage unless there's something really compelling argument that comes through from here. So what we are building at the moment is those steps we see in front of us on screen there. So just to reiterate those points is check that somebody's eligible for the repair, allow them to report that repair, to leave the customer with options about when they want their appointment, which is the part of the process that's often missing at the moment, that they can confirm that appointment, and then we get the information through. And the real important one is that last step in that the customer gets that confirmation and communication back once that the repair's been logged to give them the confidence that their process has worked for them. We're also trying to work with the Open HACT data model as well, really in an effort to try and drive the take up of this and ensure that it's as accessible to other authorities and potentially some of those private sector landlord associations if we get that far with it. And just hitting home that point again, that it's really the user needs that are at the heart of this, and we want all of our code to be open source so that it's easily implemented and understand the cost to do that. For us to be able to measure our success on this, we're kind of quite lucky in some respects in that because it's such a transactional process, we already have as authorities real good measures around this and understand our first time fix rate. We already know how well our online systems are used at the moment, which is not very well. And there's already follow-up experience, customer experience surveys, etc., that follow most repairs anyway. So we've got a real good benchmark and we'll be able to measure how successful this is. One thing I just wanted to shout out is that we try to work in the open as much as we can. We do have a blog on repairsonlinedigitalfund.com. There's also some good project history in there, and we've got previous show and tells recordings through that channel. This one will be uploaded after today. And through social media, we do our best. I'm not the whizziest on Twitter and the like, but wherever anything is posted, it will be with the hashtag of repairs online. So please follow this project and see how we go with it.
Okay.
And I think that's back to you, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Fraser. So next slide, please. Okay, so I'm just going to take you through our approach. As you can see, we kicked off the project with a lean inception, aligning on our vision, goals and MVP scope, agreeing our ways of working, absorbing the discovery and alpha insights, identified any risks, and we looked to see how we could minimise their impact. And finally, we shaped our work into an initial product backlog. We then move into phase 1, which is our current phase, where we'll validate our top hypothesis, which is the inability to pick a date and time. We'll validate our technical approach through a number of tech spikes. We'll conduct user research recruitment in preparation for user research sessions planned for later in the phase. We'll build a beta prototype based initially on the prototype that came out of alpha, changing the design and copy to improve the user experience as we move along. Off the back of the prototype, we'll build our MVP solution in the Azure cloud, develop a scheduling API to integrate with DRS and integrate with universal housing to validate council property addresses. Then moving into phase 2, we'll perform further rounds of user research and testing of the MVP, primarily to identify any unmet needs, and where we can, we'll still look to improve the user experience. As a stretch goal, we'll look to expand the MPV service pattern, which Fraser just talked about, and we'll engage with Southwark Council to prove our implementation approach. We'll look to replicate that in Southwark, the service pattern, and integrate with our systems. As we progress, we'll look to improve the API layers and create a service pattern adoption toolkit. Finally, in phase 3, we'll finalise that service pattern adoption toolkit to support the adoption of the housing repairs online service by other councils. Next slide, please, Fraser. Okay, so progress made so far. In our first week, as you can see, we completed an inception as coming together as one team. Firstly, agreeing on who would be in that core team, identifying those people and teams with specialist knowledge and capabilities that we need to collaborate with to ensure a successful outcome. And finally, identify people from various organisations like yourselves who support the project and who we need to engage with and keep informed. We then agreed on our practices and values, these being to take an agile approach, work in the open and be transparent, always look to continually improve what we do, always look to deliver value, and most importantly to the user, make what we build accessible. Finally, we shared our hopes and concerns, and where we could, we identified actions that would either remove or minimise any impact before those concerns, materialise as risks. Next slide, please, Fraser. Okay, so what have we accomplished so far? In our first sprint, we have accomplished a number of things. Firstly, we built a beta prototype, like I said, based on the alpha prototype, which we have subsequently changed in design to provide a better user experience, and amended the copy so it's relevant to Lincoln. We established connectivity to both DRS and Azure. We performed tech spikes to validate our technical approach. We set up CI/CD for testing and deployment of our software that we're building, subsequently deploying our new landing page. We plan for our first round of user research in early October, and we've agreed which stores will be supported by the MVP based on user needs. So keeping the language simple and focusing on the most frequently reported repair types. Okay, so we're next going to hand over to Aziz, our UX designer, who is going to take you through a demo which shows you the end-to-end journey of a user wanting to report a repair to a cupboard in their kitchen. Aziz.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, everyone. Right, so a bit of background first. So after alpha stage was complete, we had several versions of the prototype. And so for beta, we've made some changes, mainly sort of for this iteration, focusing around filtering ineligible users and properties, filtering them out, sorry, and also filtering those with emergencies. So as early as possible in the journey, so that if there is an emergency, you don't have to, the user doesn't have to spend 10, 15, 20 minutes finding out that they actually have to contact somebody else. And same with the ineligible users, like those reporting communal repairs or leaseholders. The scope of this phase is solely around tenants at the moment and private sort of areas. And so yeah, we've added some content around what constitutes an emergency and which areas are communal. So places like, you see, gardens, lifts, corridors, car parks. And yeah, so if you click start, please, Fraser. So this is the first filtering page where, so the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 options will all lead to either an emergency contact page or to a, so with contact details, or it will lead to various sort of kick out pages. So I think this one is purely for emergencies. Please call, and so the content for each emergency kickout page will probably be unique based on which option you choose. But if you go to something else, so then we ask whether the issue is in the communal area. So if we say yes, if we say yes, that's so we tell the user that it's currently sort of out of scope, and we give them contact details. If we say no, they continue to the next step. So now we want to find out whether the property is eligible. So and this will show us a list of properties in our database that are eligible. And if we say I can't find it, that's probably because it's not on a list, because it's not eligible, sorry. And so where is the problem located? In a kitchen. And then, so what is the problem? So we'll say cupboards. And then what's wrong with the cupboard? So it's a hanging door. And then, so there's a description page where users can choose to enter any kind of additional information, upload an image or a number of images. And so we provide some guidance on what sort of format and size the image should be. So now we get to booking the actual appointment, and so the operatives want to know whether there is any, whether there are any restrictions, so parking or access. Is there a code on the front door or anything like that? And then we provide a list of available time slots for the appointment. So they select one of them. What is your phone number? So this will be the contact number for the So this is what you have selected. So the date is obviously precise, but the time we're only available to give them time slots at the moment rather than precise time, because operatives, the previous call might be delayed or overrun, or so we can only do time slots. And then, so how would you want this to be confirmed, basically, whether it's a text message or somebody will call you or an email address? And then, so a quick summary of, what you've told us so far, and then if we need to, so you can change anything from here and come back to this page, but confirm and report. And then you get a confirmation page, which you'll also get either an email or a call or text message. whichever sort of method the user selected. Yeah, that's it. Any questions? Sorry, I think I feel like I've kind of rattled through it, but does anyone have any questions?
No.
No? Okay, cool.
Slide. Thank you, Fraser. So what's next? So we'll build user journeys within the MVP to determine whether the repair is in the communal area and enable the user to enter their property details. We'll integrate with Universal Housing to validate the addresses of council properties, and we'll continue to deepen our understanding of the DRS in terms of how it's configured and the business logic upon which it operates. Next slide, please, Fraser. So that's all we have for today to share with you. Now is your opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. Does anyone have any questions?
I think there's one in the chat, Paul.
Is there? Thank you.
Yeah.
Fraser, do you want to read that out, please?
Yeah, is there a link to that new prototype, the code behind it, from Adrian? Yes, there is a link to the prototype, and we'll be able to share that after today. There's another one. So this has validation of address already, and the time slots are coming up from integration with the booking system. Yes, that's correct. So just talking about Lincoln's example, we use Civica Universal Housing, and in our case, because of the version, there is no API integration. We're yet to decide on the best way to provide that address information, but it will only be a list of valid addresses. So we'll be building the logic in of what is a valid address before it comes to the system, if that makes sense. And in terms of the integration to the booking system, yeah, that's the main part of this beta test, to be honest, is that we want that integration to be as open as possible, to work with as many scheduling systems as possible, because there's the assumption at the moment that the reason that users don't use the online services that are available, like the ones we offer in Lincoln and Southwark, is because the journey isn't completed, in that it doesn't allow them to pick that appointment time. So we wanted to kind of, if we were going to fail fast with that integration to the booking system before considering that full integration back to the housing management systems. There's another question from Nikki, in that if one repair is done at a time, what happens if people report multiple? So on the last screen of the prototype that we were just looking at, there is the ability to report another issue. But at the moment, that MVP is that it's a one job at a time on there. The jobs won't be linked, only in that when they reach that housing management system, they're obviously linked to the property on there. Something that we've got as the future ambition is to allow customers the ability to see previous job history, but it's not something that is part of this MVP and beta at this stage. So is there a question there about different time slots? No, ultimately the customer has to pick the time slot that they want. It's not a, I prefer these slots. They are committing to that this is the time I want this work carried out. And the time slots that are presented back are kind of real time, so it won't present a slot where an operative isn't available to come and work or to complete that repair.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
So go ahead.
Sorry, that question was on the back of Nikki's. It was mine, just asking, and I think you've explained it a little bit around the MVP, but it was just that if I go on to report another repair using that link, obviously if the two aren't linked, then I could be choosing a different time slot where one engineer could have gone out and fixed both things.
Yeah, and because a large number of times it could be because it's different trades as well, and there might be different availability between those, and it could be different length of repair as well. Question from Nikki: will the housing management system be able to manage linking different jobs? It should, in that all the jobs will be stored against the property reference number. For our MVP, the update of the housing management system will still be a manual process. There'll be notifications sent to the customer service agents, but we will be expecting them to do their part of the job that they currently do today. And the reason for that is that we didn't want to bite off so much in trying to integrate to numerous housing management systems at the same time approving the principle of offering the time slot back to customers.
Okay. I'm just concerned about the time and duplication, and I understand what you're saying about different trades, but sorry, how long were the time slots as well? Is it like an hour or 2 hours, or?
It depends on the schedule of rate that's attributed to the branching.
Right.
So in our example that we just looked at, where we picked kitchen cupboard, hanging door,
Yeah.
There is an SOR attributed behind that will drive that this is an hour for a joiner, for example.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so when that integration runs back to, in our case, DRS, it will show those it will know when there's an hour slot free for a joiner on those days.
And the person will pick a particular hour. It's not a
No.
range. It's not a time range. It's an hour.
It is a range. That's how all the scheduling systems work, because they're dynamic. So if a job is overrunning, or if somebody's off sick, on leave, it always has the ability to pull or bring jobs forward.
So the customer knows that it's going to last an hour, but it's between 10 and 12,
That's right.
for example. Yeah. Okay, so but potentially, if they're saying that the kitchen cupboard and then there's another thing, and they coincidentally happen to be the same trade, does that mean that they will have to wait in between 10 and 12 because they reported the first thing, and then 12 and 2 if they try and tag it on the end, or if there is a 12 and 2, or if not, they might have to do between 4 and 6 for 2 different jobs? Is that potentially what you're saying?
Yeah, potentially, because of the availability of that tradesperson. I would also like to add that in Lincoln's case, 98% of the calls that are logged are for a single issue.
Right, okay.
And I think it was similar numbers for Southwark. When we looked, it was high 90s. There was the assumption that people want to report and tell the council about lots of things, but generally it is about that I've got this one thing that is on my mind at this time.
Okay.
But yeah, I totally hear what you're saying, Nikki, in that ideally that's where we want to get to with it, in that it would make sense that to give people the opportunity to do that. But in all honesty, it's that we've got the finite budget to develop what we can in this stage. So we're focusing on what we think is the barrier at the moment. And if we can debunk that assumption or prove that isn't the case, and that when we offer that scheduling capability, customers will start to use this channel, that's when we'll start to look at enriching that experience further and doing those other elements.
Okay. Thank you.
It's not that we're off sight of them, it's just trying to stay clear on what we can do in the time and limits that we've got.
I was just going to add that we're giving the residents a number of options there to book the repair. So we're giving them up to five days with four time periods within each day.
Okay, yeah.
And if none of those meet their needs, then they can click on the more button, and we'll give them another 5 dates.
Okay.
In the future.
That's good.
Any more questions from anyone? Thank you, Nikki. Have we answered them all?
There might be a question coming through on the chat. So has the experience been tested and compared? So in the discovery and alpha rounds, the common service pattern was compared against options that are on the market currently available. And the biggest difference, I would say, from the ones that we've seen is that they are all driven so heavily around the SOR, and that is at the kind of front of the experience of the customer. And that kind of limits that accessibility and engagement through it. And a lot are driven by pictorial, which again, with the user testing that we've done, residents found those quite confusing in terms of that it doesn't look like their kitchen, for example, and also by the time it's rendered down onto a mobile device, it can be even less useful and less accessible by that point. The experience in terms of the prototype that we've just shown you hasn't yet been tested with customers, but very similar ones were in alpha, and it has already been iterated to the point of where it is today. Yes, you can upload photos.
Just going back to the question about whether the experience has been tested, we have, as a core team, done walkthroughs of the beta prototype, and we feel that we've already improved the design and the copy that was in the alpha prototype. And like Fraser says, but we haven't actually put this in front of real users, but we will be doing that in the next couple of weeks. Okay, any more questions? If there's no more questions, then I just want to thank everyone for coming to our first show and share. And we look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks and updating you on the progress that we're making. Thanks very much.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.